Welcome back to the final part of the programme and a look at some models that the rest of the world gets to enjoy, but as yet we don't. Let's start with a very famous Italian marque by the name of Benelli. Founded by 6 brothers in 1911 in the city of Pesaro on the Adriatic coast, 110 years later the company is still going, although it's not really quite so Italian anymore. The bikes are all made in Wenling, China by QJ Motors, though to be fair, much of the design work and setup of components like suspension and brakes apparently still takes place out of Pesaro. Benellis have been imported into South Africa in the past, though at the moment I'm not too sure what the situation is, but you'd think somebody might be looking at it again because the range is now stronger than ever, and there are some interesting and already successful models that would in theory do very well in SA. At the end of last year we showed you the impending, well, end of 2022 kind of impending TRK 800 adventure model that looks like it has the goods to be a serious contender in the adventure market, and that arrives on the back of sales of the phenomenon that is the smaller relation to that, the TRK 502, the best-selling bike over 500 cc's in Italy last year. An affordable middleweight adventure bike with a proven sales track record, a sexy Italian name, and a made-in-China kind of price. Oh yeah, I can't see that having any relevance to our local market, eh? The brand made a big noise at EICMA at the end of November about the new adventure bike, but also on its stand were a couple of models that might also appeal to South Africans. Using the same underpinnings as the TRK 800, we have the Leoncino. So that means it has a trellis work of steel tubing for the frame, a 754cc parallel twin engine that generates 75 horsepower and 67 Newton meters. There's a Marzocchi fork up front with the usual these days upside down fork legs and 17-inch alley spoked wheels running tubeless tyres. The headlight is LED and there's a TFT screen instead of a more traditional dash. There's also a rather fetching trail version of the Leoncino 800 that gets longer travel suspension, a 19-inch front rim, chunkier off-road rubber, and a redesigned higher level twin exhaust, all of which undoubtedly give the trail an edge in the looks department. It may handle off-road conditions better, but I have a feeling this is also one that would appeal to the image-conscious hipster crowd as well. If neither of the Leoncinos appeal, then there is always the 752S with its more traditional middleweight naked bike look. Same basic ingredients, road biased suspension and wheels. It would surely offer the dominant naked contenders from Japan a run for their money, not least in terms of price. Okay, from the ultimate in what they call badge engineering, where a manufacturer, in this case Chinese, gets a whole load of instant history and style, Italian on this occasion, let's move on to some bikes that are more openly Chinese. CF Moto made a splash at EICMA, also with their own adventure model, destined to debut later this year, the 800MT, that is a direct result of it having been a long-time manufacturing collaborator with KTM. So you've basically got KTM's 790 parallel twin being used by the Chinese firm, who were building it anyway, while KTM has since moved on to the 890. As an interesting aside, the Austrian firm has been spotted testing what looks like a 990 for release in its road-going models later this year, and probably the adventure bikes after that. How the wheel or crank turns. 990 is obviously a famous capacity for KTM, and not only for its adventure models but also the Duke road bikes, when it used to be the top big engine capacity. Now it's the entry-level middleweight option. Anyway, now famous for the impending 800MT, CF Moto also has a dedicated road bike in the shape of the CLX 700, of which there is also a sport version. This is a pretty funky looking bike with a modern cafe racer air to its stance. No doubt its good looks are heavily influenced by the same team that designs KTM's bikes. It features a 693cc parallel twin that will dish out a more than respectable 73 horsepower and 68 Newton meters. There's a slipper clutch and some properly adjustable suspension. Take a look at the brakes. Some serious M50 radial monoblock calipers from Brembo and big 300mm discs. On the electronic side, you could usually count on Chinese models having nothing much more complex than barely functioning indicators, but these are self-cancelling and they're complemented by daytime running lights, and there's cruise control and riding modes, one for economy and the other for sport. The competition from Japan is generally, these days, knocking around the 140,000 Rand mark, but if pricing in the rest of the world is anything to go by, this could easily be at least 30,000 Rand cheaper than that. Food for thought, I'm sure you'll agree. Right, to end, let's move from China back to Italy and talk about Moto Morini, another famous brand with the same hometown as Ducati, Bologna. The company was founded in 1937, although it gained fame after the Second World War when it went racing. Its heyday was probably the 1970s, though by 2010 it had gone out of business completely. A couple of years later it was reborn, and it is once again selling respectable numbers in Italy and expanding into many other markets except as yet South Africa. Its headline bike is undoubtedly the Milano, a great looking naked bike with a 115 horsepower, 1187cc, 87 degree V-twin at its heart, wrapped in the almost inevitable trellis of steel tubes, fully adjustable suspension, Brembo brakes, and a customizable 5-inch TFT screen are part of a package that would, in theory, set you back about 265,000 Rand, or about the same as the tech version of the T-Max we mentioned in part 1 of the programme. Some lovely bikes that don't make it to SA. Hopefully some entrepreneurial souls are working on these brands though, because as you've seen, there's some good stuff out there that we're currently missing out on. And that's your lot, I'm afraid. We'll be back again next week with more from the world of motorcycling. See you then.